Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say might completely rewrite how you see every sigh, every complaint, every quiet accusation that something just doesn't feel right in your relationship. You've probably heard the same story 1,000 times. She's not happy. She can't explain why. She just isn't. You'll ask, what's wrong? She'll say, nothing. But her tone, her silence, her distance, it all screams everything. And so begins the cycle. The man starts fixing things that aren't broken, apologizing for things that aren't his fault, and slowly turning into a version of himself he doesn't even recognize. All in the hope that one day she'll finally say those magic words, I'm happy. But that day never comes. Because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Many women are programmed to be unhappy. Not consciously, not maliciously, but psychologically, emotionally, culturally. They are conditioned from birth to chase an ideal that doesn't exist. To crave perfection, to measure their lives not by what they have, but by what's missing. And no man, no amount of love, money, effort, or devotion can compete with a ghost. I want you to imagine this. You're standing in your kitchen after a long day, exhausted but proud. You've done everything right. You worked hard, helped around the house, made dinner, maybe even planned a small surprise. Nothing huge, just something thoughtful. She walks in. You expect a smile, maybe a small hug. Instead, you get that look. The same one you've seen 100 times. Her eyes scan the room, then there's a pause. Then the sigh. That quiet exhale of disappointment that hits harder than a shout ever could. And you feel it, that invisible drop in your chest. The one that says, whatever I did, it wasn't enough. Now here's the twist. It never could be. Because her unhappiness isn't about the dinner, or the house, or the way you forgot to fold the towels her way. It's not about you at all. It's about an internal program, one that was installed long before you ever met her. Let's go deeper. Most women grow up being told they're special, unique, destined for a fairy tale life. Someday your prince will come. Someday you'll have it all. Someday you'll be perfectly happy. So they spend their lives chasing that someday. The perfect man, the perfect career, the perfect home, the perfect body, the perfect emotional state where everything finally feels complete. But the problem is, life doesn't work that way. There is no complete. There's only reality, bills, routine, imperfection, ordinary love. And for someone raised to believe happiness should feel like fireworks every day, reality feels like failure. So she starts scanning for what's missing, what's wrong, what could be better. That's the seed of female unhappiness. An internal search for imperfection that becomes endless. And once it starts, it never stops. If she's single, she's lonely. If she's dating, she's anxious. If she's married, she's bored. If she's divorced, she's bitter. If she has kids, she's overwhelmed. If she doesn't, she's unfulfilled. It's an emotional treadmill that never ends, because no stage of life lives up to the fantasy she was promised. And here's the most tragic part. Men keep trying to fix it. They think if they work harder, love deeper, communicate better, she'll finally find peace. But you can't fix a woman who confuses excitement for happiness and stability for boredom. You can't fix someone who's been taught that contentment is complacency. I once worked with a man. Good guy, successful, steady, loving. He told me, I've done everything. I cook, clean, travel, plan, surprise. But nothing's ever good enough. She finds fault in everything. So I asked, was she happy before you? He paused, then said, come to think of it, I don't think she ever was. Exactly. That's the part most men miss. If she wasn't happy before you, she won't be happy with you. Because happiness isn't something you give someone. It's something they bring into the relationship. But modern women, raised in comparison culture, are losing that ability. Every scroll through social media is a highlight reel of someone else's life. Her friend's husband bought a house. Her coworker got engaged in Bali. That influencer's kitchen looks like heaven. So she looks at her own life, your life together, and it feels smaller by comparison. Not because it is small, but because it's real. And real can't compete with illusion. It's the endless game of almost. almost enough money, almost enough affection, almost enough excitement, almost enough happiness. But almost will never fill the void because the void isn't circumstantial. It's psychological. It's the deep, programmed belief that happiness always exists somewhere else. That's why so many women chase better. A better man, a better body, a better life. They can't rest because rest feels like settling, and settling feels like failure. But the cruel joke? Even when they get better, they don't feel better. They just find new reasons to be unhappy. Because their unhappiness isn't an external problem. It's an internal addiction. An addiction to dissatisfaction. A need for something to fix, something to chase, something to blame. And men, bless them, keep trying to fill that bottomless cup, thinking one more effort, one more gesture, one more act of love will finally be the cure. But it won't, because you can't fill a cup that was never built to hold anything. The truth is, her unhappiness predates you. It's generational. Her grandmother carried it. Her mother modeled it. And now she performs it, subconsciously, habitually, because unhappiness feels familiar. It's her emotional home. And you, without realizing it, are just the latest tenant in that inherited storm. So the next time you hear her say, "I'm just not happy," don't rush to fix it. Don't bend yourself into another shape. Don't sacrifice your peace for her validation. Because the truth is, you're not the cause of her unhappiness. You're just the mirror reflecting it back to her. And until she looks at that reflection, really looks, no man alive can make her smile for long. Let's peel back the layers, because what most men call moodiness or drama is actually a psychological loop so old, so embedded, that it functions like clockwork inside the female psyche. You see, unhappiness for many women isn't a temporary emotion. It's an ecosystem. It's the emotional landscape they were raised in, the climate they learned to breathe in. And once you understand that, you'll finally stop trying to be the oxygen in someone else's storm. Let's start with the first mechanism, the inherited lens of dissatisfaction. From the moment a girl is old enough to understand the world, she's taught one quiet lesson. You are not enough, and neither is what you have. Look around, the magazines, the movies, the influencers. Every image tells her she could be happier if only. If only she had clearer skin. If only she had a flatter stomach. If only she had a better man. If only she had what she has. This if only script becomes the soundtrack of her life. It never stops playing, even when she grows up, gets the career, the house, the husband, the children. Because happiness to her isn't something to feel. It's something to chase. And the second she catches it, the mind whispers, "What's next?" That's the cruel design. Her brain literally resets the finish line every time she crosses it. You see, psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the idea that humans adjust quickly to positive changes and return to a baseline level of satisfaction. But in women, that baseline has been corrupted by generations of emotional conditioning. Their baseline isn't peace. It's comparison. A woman doesn't just want to feel happy. She wants to feel happier than her sister, happier than her coworker, happier than the woman in the post she saw 5 minutes ago. It's not about joy. It's about ranking. And no matter where she lands on that invisible scoreboard, someone always appears just 1 point ahead. That's why so many men feel confused when she seems unhappy for no reason. Because the reason isn't in front of her. It's inside her. Now here's where it gets darker. The father wound. Almost every chronically unhappy woman I've ever met carries it. Maybe he was absent. Maybe he was cold. Maybe he was there but emotionally unreachable. Whatever the case, he planted one simple belief: men disappoint me. And that belief becomes prophecy. She grows up seeking men who will repeat the pattern, or turning even good men into villains through impossible expectations. She needs to test you. She needs to see if you'll fail her too. Because deep down, she believes you will. And when you inevitably do, not because you're cruel, but because you're human, the prophecy is fulfilled. See, she tells herself, they're all the same. Now you're no longer her partner. You're her therapy project. She wants you to heal what another man broke. But she'll punish you the moment you try. Because if she heals, she loses her story. And that story, men always disappoint me, is the foundation of her identity. Then there's the mother mirror, perhaps the most powerful mechanism of all. If her mother was never happy, if her mother complained about everything, if her mother sighed her way through life, she learned that's what womanhood looks like. That's what marriage looks like. That's what love looks like. Not joy, but endurance. Not gratitude, but grievance. I've seen daughters become carbon copies of the very mothers they swore they'd never become. They even use the same words, the same tone, the same disappointed glance across the dinner table. Because humans don't become what they want, they become what they see. And here's where modern culture pours gasoline on the fire. We tell women they can have it all. Career, family, freedom, luxury, peace. And when reality inevitably demands trade-offs, when they can't give 100% to everything at once, they feel like failures. Not because they failed, but because they were promised they wouldn't have to choose. Now imagine that pressure simmering under the surface every day. She's not just comparing herself to other women. She's comparing herself to the fantasy version of herself that doesn't exist. And no man can compete with a fantasy. Here's another secret few talk about. Women bond through shared unhappiness. If she's content, peaceful, satisfied, she doesn't have much to say in her social circle. But if she's struggling, if she's exhausted, if she's the one who gives and never gets enough, suddenly she belongs. Her friends rally. Her mother nods knowingly. Her therapist validates her. Misery gives her community. Contentment isolates her. That's why happy women are rare, because in a culture addicted to empathy and victimhood, happiness looks suspicious. If she's happy, she must be naive, out of touch, privileged. So subconsciously, she chooses misery because misery is relatable. And relatable is safe. Now let's talk biology, because this runs deeper than emotion. The female brain is wired for scanning, for noticing what's missing, what's unsafe, what needs improvement. It's survival instinct repurposed for modern life. In prehistoric times, that vigilance kept her tribe alive. Today, it just keeps her anxious. Her brain can't turn it off. That's why she can walk into a perfectly fine restaurant and instantly notice the one flickering light, the slightly rude waiter, the small stain on the tablecloth. Her biology magnifies imperfection. Pair that with the cultural script that tells her you deserve more, and you've got a psychological feedback loop of endless discontent. And who gets caught in that loop with her? You do. Because men, bless your logical, problem-solving minds, think unhappiness has a cause and therefore a cure. You think, if I find the reason, I can fix it. But her unhappiness isn't rational. It's emotional, instinctive. It's the smoke, not the fire. The fire burns much deeper, in the gap between what is and what she thinks should be. You'll spend years trying to close that gap with effort, gifts, romance, patience. But the moment you get close, she moves the goalposts. Not because she's cruel, but because the goal isn't the goal. It's the chase. Happiness feels like stillness, and stillness scares her. Because stillness means she has to face herself. And here's the paradox. The more she tries to fix her unhappiness, the worse it gets. She reads self-help books that tell her she's a queen who deserves more. She scrolls through endless motivational reels about never settling. And instead of finding peace, she finds proof that her ordinary, imperfect life isn't good enough. So she projects the tension outward onto you. You become the symbol of what's missing. You become the reason she can't feel whole. Not because you failed, but because she cannot accept that happiness was never something anyone could give her. And while you try to reason, to reassure, to love her back to balance, she interprets it as weakness. Because deep down, she doesn't want a man who fixes her mood. She wants a man whose peace is unshakable. But she'll test that peace over and over to see if it's real. Here's the cruel irony. The moment you lose yourself trying to make her happy, she loses respect for you. And the moment you stop trying, she calls you distant. That's the trap. That's the loop. And the only way out is awareness. Until a woman recognizes that her unhappiness is hers. Not the world's fault. Not your fault. Not her mother's fault. She'll keep recreating it. New man, same story. New job, same emptiness. New city, same restlessness. Because she's not running from you, she's running from herself. And the longer you chase her trying to make her happy, the more you become the villain in her unfinished story. There's a silent plague spreading through modern relationships, one that no one dares to call by its name. It's not infidelity, not lack of love, not even boredom. It's comparison, the endless, merciless, invisible habit of measuring one's life against illusions and losing every time. Every unhappy woman today lives in two realities. The one she has and the one she scrolls through. Her real life, ordinary, imperfect, sometimes dull, often full of small comforts, and her digital reflection, where everyone else seems to live in endless bliss. She opens her phone and watches other people's happiness on loop. Someone's honeymoon, someone's anniversary trip, someone's surprise proposal perfectly captured in golden light. She sees not lives, but edited versions of lives, and her brain doesn't know the difference. The result? A slow, steady erosion of gratitude. A constant whisper that says, "You should have more. You should be more." It's death by 1,000 comparisons. You might think this sounds harmless. After all, everyone compares sometimes. But for many women, it's become the core operating system of their psyche. Their emotions now function in direct proportion to other people's performances. Her happiness doesn't depend on what she has, but on how what she has looks next to what someone else has. If her friend posts flowers, her husband suddenly feels inadequate. If her coworker gets a promotion, her own achievements lose their shine. If another woman looks slimmer, suddenly she hates her own reflection. It's not just jealousy, it's identity rot. And this rot spreads quietly. First, she doesn't notice. She calls it motivation. "I just like seeing what's possible," she says. But over time, what's possible starts to feel like what's missing. And every missing thing becomes proof of her personal failure or yours. You can't fight it. You can't outlove the algorithm. Because no matter how much you give, someone online will always appear to give more. And her mind will always choose the fantasy over the flesh. But comparison is only the first half of the trap. The second is emptiness. Modern women have been told they can fill the void with everything external: success, romance, validation, self-love mantras. But when the music fades and the screen goes dark, there's a silence that terrifies them. Because that silence holds a question they don't know how to answer. Who am I without attention? Attention has become the new oxygen. Likes, comments, messages, tiny digital hits of dopamine that make her feel seen for a moment, until they vanish. Then comes the crash. And to escape that crash, she needs another hit. Another photo, another post, another little burst of artificial meaning. It's an addiction disguised as empowerment. And you, the man beside her, become collateral damage. Because every time you fail to provide the same high, the same intensity, novelty, stimulation, she starts to withdraw. Not because she doesn't care, but because her nervous system has been rewired for drama. Peace feels like emptiness to her. Stability feels like boredom. Love feels too quiet to be real. So she subconsciously manufactures chaos, arguments, emotional distance, subtle provocations, just to feel alive again. She doesn't know she's doing it, but her brain, starving for dopamine, does. That's why she'll pick fights over nothing. That's why she'll test you, withdraw affection, or provoke your frustration. She's trying to recreate the emotional intensity that makes her feel desired, not realizing it's the very thing destroying her peace. And men, you get stuck in a paradox. When you bring peace, she grows restless. When you bring passion, she calls you unstable. When you withdraw to protect yourself, she says you're distant. When you engage, she says you're too much. It's not that she doesn't want love. It's that she no longer recognizes what love actually feels like. Love, in its purest form, is calm. But she doesn't trust calm. Calm feels wrong. Because every relationship she's ever seen, her parents, her friends, her own past, has been fueled by chaos. So when you bring peace, her nervous system sounds the alarm. This is too quiet. Something must be wrong. And then, without realizing it, she creates something wrong. just to restore her sense of normal. It's self-sabotage disguised as truth-seeking. And it's destroying thousands of modern relationships every single day. But the real tragedy? She doesn't know she's doing it. Because she's surrounded by voices that validate her dysfunction. Follow your feelings. Don't settle. You deserve more. No one ever says, maybe it's not about more. Maybe it's about enough. Enough doesn't sell products. Enough doesn't trend. Enough doesn't make you post. And so, she keeps running faster, louder, emptier. Because the chase has become her identity. You can't save her by running with her. You can't fix her by chasing behind her. The only thing you can do is stand still and let her see that peace doesn't mean weakness. It means freedom. But she won't understand that right away. Because the truth is, unhappy women aren't just fighting the world. They're fighting their own biology, their own programming, their own reflection. And that's a war no one wins. Until she stops searching for happiness outside herself, every man she meets will become another mirror of her emptiness. She'll look into his eyes and only see the echo of what's missing within. And until she faces that, the endless scrolling, the endless wanting, the endless dissatisfaction will go on forever. Because what makes her unhappy isn't you, or the world, or her past. It's the simple, haunting truth. She's addicted to wanting what she doesn't have, and terrified of having nothing left to want. There always comes a moment, a quiet one, not with yelling, not with tears, not with slammed doors. Comes in silence. It's that instant when a man finally exhales and realizes that the woman standing in front of him isn't his partner anymore. She's his project. And he's tired. For months, maybe years, he's been walking on eggshells, analyzing every sigh, every tone, every glance for hidden meaning. He's rewritten himself 1,000 times. Softer, stronger, more romantic, more distant. Hoping one version of him would finally make her happy. But none did. Because her unhappiness was never about him. That's when something shifts inside him. Not anger, not hatred, just clarity. He looks at her, the same woman he once adored, and instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" he finally asks, "Why am I still trying?" And that question changes everything. Because a man can endure many things, criticism, rejection, misunderstanding, but he cannot thrive in a place where he's constantly made to feel not enough. Love cannot grow in a house built on apology. Peace cannot exist where one heart keeps bleeding to prove its worth. He remembers the beginning, how her laughter used to fill the room, how her eyes lit up at his presence. He remembers the warmth, the connection, the hope, and then he compares it to now, the constant tension, the unspoken resentment, the way she looks at him not as a partner, but as a disappointment she's still trying to fix. And that's when he understands he's been loving a memory, not a person. Because somewhere along the line, she stopped seeing him. Not because he changed, but because her inner storm clouded everything. No matter how much light he brought, it never reached her. He was loving someone lost inside her own maze, trying to solve puzzles that weren't his to solve. So he stops, not out of bitterness but out of survival. He stops trying to prove his love, stops explaining himself, stops performing for approval that never comes. He doesn't shout, he doesn't threaten, he doesn't beg, he just disengages. He rediscovers silence, not as punishment, but as peace. He rediscovers solitude, not as loneliness, but as freedom. He rediscovers himself, the man he was before he started chasing validation that was never meant to be caught. And here's the paradox. That's usually when she panics. Because she feels the shift, that subtle withdrawal, the energy that used to orbit around her now centered within him. She'll say he's cold, distant, changed. But what really changed is this: for the first time, his happiness no longer depends on hers. That's when the power dynamic flips. Because a man who's no longer afraid to lose her becomes the man she can no longer control. And for the first time in a long time, she starts to feel what he felt all along, the fear of loss. She starts to miss his presence, his patience, his devotion. But it's too late because he's no longer giving those things away for free. He's learned the hardest truth. that no amount of love can heal someone who refuses to meet you halfway. He finally sees her for what she is, not evil, not broken, just trapped. Trapped in expectations she never questioned, pain she never healed, stories she never rewrote. And he realizes her unhappiness isn't his burden to carry. That's when he walks away, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Because he's learned that saving her means losing himself, and that's a trade he can no longer afford. The world will call him heartless. They'll say he gave up, but he didn't give up, he woke up. He woke up to the truth that love cannot be built on endless repair. He woke up to the reality that peace isn't found in chaos disguised as passion. He woke up to the sacred knowledge that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave. And as he steps into the silence she used to fill, he realizes something he's never felt before. Not bitterness, not regret, but a quiet gratitude. Because through her, he learned the difference between attachment and connection, between pleasing and loving, between surviving and living. He learned that real love doesn't demand that you lose yourself. Real love doesn't grow from guilt. Real love isn't built on someone's inability to be content. So he lets her go, not to punish her, but to free them both. And maybe one day she'll understand that the man she thought wasn't enough was actually the one who tried the hardest. But by the time she realizes it, he'll be gone, not out of spite, but because his peace finally came home.